Whitney's fears were confirmed by the shocking scenes captured on the hidden camera she had installed, leaving her utterly devastated. Her maternal instincts, which had been on high alert, proved to be correct, prompting her to take decisive action to safeguard her daughter, Rachel. Whitney had always prioritized creating a secure environment for her child. When she noticed a sudden and inexplicable change in Rachel's demeanor, it raised a red flag. This concern led Whitney to set up a hidden camera to monitor the situation. The distressing footage she later reviewed shattered her heart. The year 2011 was a significant one for the Whitney family from Springdale, Arkansas. As they anticipated the arrival of their newborn daughter with great excitement, Whitney and Chris were filled with joy when Rachel was born, bringing a fresh sense of joy and renewal to their family dynamics, with Whitney pursuing her law degree. Finding a trustworthy caregiver for Rachel became imperative. After asking for recommendations on Facebook, an old high school acquaintance, Melissa Medina, showed interest in the position. Despite hearing positive reviews about Melissa, Whitney knew the importance of being vigilant when entrusting someone with her child's care. She meticulously reviewed Melissa's Facebook profile and contacted a reference which reassured her enough to believe she had chosen a dependable caregiver. However, the hidden camera would soon expose a heartbreaking reality. At first, Melissa's interactions with Rachel seemed unproblematic, and Whitney had no immediate reasons for concern. Whitney, a determined individual far from being just a stay-at-home mom or solely a wife, felt confident enough to return to work after a few months of Melissa looking after Rachel, despite her significant anxiety. Handing over Rachel to Melissa on her first day back at work initially seemed like a relief to both Whitney and Chris. Everything seemed normal upon their return home. That evening, however, they observed a change in Rachel's behavior that left them uneasy. Unable to pinpoint the exact cause, Whitney's anxiety intensified. Was Rachel simply ill, or was she exhausted from adjusting to a new routine? They wrestled with these possibilities. Finding no definitive answers, Rachel, usually vibrant and energetic, began taking unusually long naps, which puzzled Whitney. Were they overanalyzing every aspect of their child's behavior? A common worry among first-time parents. To alleviate their concerns, Whitney took Rachel to the doctor, emphasizing her daughter's apparent discomfort. Despite Whitney's worries, the doctor found no physical issues, suggesting that Rachel might be experiencing separation anxiety, a common occurrence in children her age. This situation illustrates the complexities and challenges of parenting, especially when external caregiving is involved. It highlights the importance of trusting one's instincts and taking proactive steps when something doesn't feel right in the care of a child. Separation anxiety typically surfaces in children as excessive clinginess and tearful episodes, particularly when parents are not around. Whitney found herself increasingly troubled by her daughter Rachel's behavior. Something didn't sit right with her, igniting a new set of concerns that she struggled to brush aside. Despite her attempts to dismiss these uneasy feelings, Whitney's maternal instincts continued to nag at her, leading her to suspect that Melissa, Rachel's nanny, might be at the heart of her daughter's distressing change in behavior. Determined to uncover the truth, Whitney decided to take matters into her own hands. After much thought, she purchased a clock equipped with a hidden camera and strategically placed it in her home to monitor Melissa's interactions with Rachel. The anxiety of not knowing what was happening when she was not around was overwhelming. When she finally reviewed the footage, her heart sank as her worst fears materialized before her eyes. What Whitney observed was a clear betrayal of trust. The camera had captured Melissa engaging in behavior that was both shocking and heartbreaking. It appeared that Melissa had either become aware of the camera and used it to her advantage, or she was completely oblivious to being filmed. Whitney's hands trembled as she connected the camcorder to her computer, desperate for answers. Each second felt like an eternity as she waited for the playback, wondering if perhaps there was nothing but innocuous footage, or worse, if the device had been tampered with. Her resolve to find out the truth was fueled by the troubling scenes she witnessed. The recordings revealed that Melissa had left Rachel in a jumper for an extended period of 2 hours with no supervision. The video displayed the little girl in distress, left hungry, dehydrated, and in pain, immobilized and unable to escape her uncomfortable situation. Further footage showed Melissa physically abusing Rachel by hitting and violently shaking her to stop her crying. This type of abuse, known as shaken baby syndrome, is particularly dangerous as it can cause severe brain damage and have catastrophic effects on a child's health, often without visible symptoms unless the abuse is directly observed. The hidden camera footage finally provided the explanation behind Rachel's altered behavior. It captured Melissa's violent actions, including shaking and slapping the child, in a failed attempt to quiet her cries. Horrified and deeply concerned by this revelation, Whitney immediately rushed Rachel to the emergency room to ensure her daughter's safety and well-being. She also contacted the police to report the abuse, providing them with the disturbing evidence captured by the nanny cam. This incident highlighted the crucial importance of vigilance and trust in childcare, and the potentially severe consequences when that trust is broken. Whitney was left to grapple with the betrayal by someone she and her husband Chris had once trusted implicitly to care for their child. Melissa had been captured on surveillance footage mistreating a defenseless child, a shocking incident that went unnoticed until the footage surfaced. The following day, Melissa arrived at work, oblivious to the fact that her routine day was about to take a dramatic turn. As she exited her vehicle, she was suddenly surrounded by police officers and promptly arrested. Taken directly to the police station, Whitney, a concerned neighbor, managed to snap a photo of Melissa being escorted into custody from her front window. It was a significant moment, as Melissa was finally facing the consequences for her actions as a person who exploited the innocence and vulnerability of children. However, the legal repercussions for Melissa were somewhat mitigated by the fact that this was her first offense. She was charged with a Class D felony for endangering the welfare of a minor, the least severe category of felony, which meant the potential consequences were not particularly harsh, up to 3 months in jail. Furthermore, there was a possibility she could return to her job as a nanny and potentially have the charge expunged from her record. Due to the absence of a national registry for child abusers, determined to prevent future harm, Whitney initiated a campaign by sharing her story widely with the media and engaging with community members, recognizing that simply spreading awareness might not suffice to keep Melissa from working with other vulnerable families. Whitney embarked on a mission to implement significant legislative changes. She proposed the establishment of a child abuse registry in Arkansas, which would be a pioneering move in the United States. This registry would list anyone convicted of child abuse, thereby offering crucial information to safeguard children. Despite all her efforts, Melissa had yet to present her side of the story. She stayed away from media interactions and did not provide any explanations for her actions. Her motives remained a mystery, but one thing was certain: her career as a nanny was effectively over. Whitney, leveraging her law degree, continued her advocacy vigorously, garnering support from hundreds and making strong professional and constitutional cases for her cause. In a more positive light, when Rachel was initially taken to the hospital, she underwent extensive testing and scans. Remarkably, there was no significant brain damage detected. Today, the Whitney family is flourishing. In a recent interview, Whitney shared that Rachel is a bundle of energy, always smiling and bringing joy to their lives. While challenges remain, the family's resilience and Whitney's proactive stance offer a beacon of hope and change, to only scratch the surface of the family's deep-seated problems. Despite the grim circumstances, their bond, fortified by resilience and love, remained unbroken, preparing them to face any psychological issues that might emerge later due to shaken baby syndrome. This wraps up our initial narrative. Next, we delve into another touching story. 9-year-old Victoria, a ball of energy and joy, found immense pleasure in the schoolyard games with her peers during recess, her most cherished part of the day. She reveled in dodgeball, jumped rope with gusto, and was always eager to forge new friendships. These simple joys provided a much-needed escape from the difficulties she encountered at home. Despite her academic challenges, particularly in math where she often fumbled during tests due to anxiety, Victoria was a committed student, fueled by her aspiration to one day become a veterinarian and nurture animals in need. Her home life, however, painted a starkly different picture. Victoria and her father, Rodrigo, lived under the shadow of poverty, a situation exacerbated by the heart-wrenching loss of her mother and 2 younger siblings in a catastrophic accident 3 years earlier. What began as a joyful return from a beach outing turned into despair when their tour bus, which was the best Rodrigo could afford, suffered a tire blowout and veered off a cliff. This horrific incident claimed the lives of her family members and left both Victoria and Rodrigo as the sole survivors. This tragic event not only inflicted physical injuries but also deep emotional scars that altered their lives permanently. Determined to provide for Victoria, Rodrigo devoted himself to her upbringing, spending countless hours supporting her recovery and daily needs. However, their lives took another distressing turn when Victoria began experiencing discomfort in her private areas, a situation that eventually involved authorities and exposed a harrowing truth of her silent suffering. To make matters worse, Rodrigo lost his job abruptly, with no severance pay, plunging him further into despair. At 35, and despite being relatively young, he was hampered by a chronic leg injury from the accident, and the psychological toll of the event left him withdrawn and taciturn, a stark contrast to his former self. Victoria, though young and not fully aware of the depths of her father's struggles, noticed the drastic changes in him. In her earnest desire to alleviate some of his burdens, she diligently took on various household chores, hoping to bring some relief. However small, her actions, while helpful, were far from enough to mend the deeper issues at play, but they underscored the profound love and resilience that held their small family together through incredible adversity. Victoria constantly struggled to alleviate her father Rodrigo's perpetual dissatisfaction. Rodrigo, overwhelmed with the responsibilities of 2 new jobs he had recently taken on to support their family, found little time or energy for interactions with his daughter. His weariness was palpable, especially because his second job required him to work nights, which left Victoria to face many of life's challenges on her own. Despite these circumstances, Victoria maintained a resilient spirit and found solace in her school routine, which served as a temporary refuge from her familial strife. However, her semblance of stability was abruptly disrupted when Rodrigo came home one day, his demeanor charged with suppressed anger and his knuckles visibly tense from stress. Victoria retreated to her room, her heart pounding in fear as she heard the door slam shut. Moments later, Rodrigo stood in her doorway, his presence menacing and his speech slurred from intoxication. He bombarded her with accusatory questions about her whereabouts on a school-free Saturday, escalating the tension and leaving Victoria bewildered and on the brink of tears, unable to decipher the root of his anger. In the following days, Victoria tried to resume her normal life, but was haunted by an inexplicable fear. By Monday, she awoke to a disturbing sensation of discomfort in her private areas, a feeling of unease that she couldn't dismiss. As her father had already left for work, she went about her morning routine, only to find the discomfort worsening with every movement she made. By the time she arrived at her classroom, the discomfort had grown into a persistent ache that severely hindered her ability to focus on her studies. As the day progressed, the pain intensified, and Victoria knew she needed to seek some relief during the upcoming recess. Once outside, she attempted to engage and play with her peers, but each movement only aggravated her pain, which felt like an internal slicing too intense to conceal. Overwhelmed by distress, she confided in her friends about her discomfort. Uncertain of what to do, they collectively decided to approach their teacher, Clara, for help. Observing Victoria's evident pain, Clara approached with a compassionate demeanor, inquiring about her well-being. Embarrassed and overwhelmed, Victoria struggled to verbalize her torment. With her gaze lowered, she mustered the courage to indicate her private area as the source of her pain. Alarmed and concerned, Clara encouraged her to elaborate and inquired if she had discussed this at home. Caught off guard, Victoria hesitated, which only increased Clara's concern. Under Clara's gentle yet persistent questioning, the pressure mounted, highlighting the gravity of the situation. Victoria reluctantly confessed that her father was her sole caregiver at home. This admission deepened Clara's concern, as she realized how little she knew about Rodrigo, who had never participated in any school parent meetings. His absence left his character and motives shrouded in mystery. Conscious of the dangers faced by children in vulnerable situations like Victoria's, Clara gently probed for any signs of unusual or concerning behavior from her father at home. feeling a tumult of emotions and recalling an incident where Rodrigo had lost his temper in her room. Victoria remained reticent, struggling to express her fears. She assured Clara that everything was fine now and that the pain had subsided, desperately trying to deflect any further scrutiny. Victoria then returned to her seat, continuing to mask her suffering with a veneer of normalcy. Despite Victoria's attempts to conceal her distress, Clara could not overlook her growing apprehension. Throughout the class, she observed Victoria's distracted demeanor and the subtle hints of discomfort she tried to hide. Deeply troubled by her student's predicament, Clara was determined to find a way to assist her. As the days went by, Victoria endured her pain in isolation. Her anxiety intensifying with each painful episode. Feeling alone and unsure, she found it difficult to confide in anyone. Another teacher, Laura, also noticed Victoria's ongoing distress and approached her for answers. However, bound by fear, Victoria maintained her facade of normalcy, insisting that everything was fine despite her internal chaos. Sensing that something was amiss, Laura discussed her concerns with her colleagues and school authorities, advocating for Victoria's welfare. With Victoria's safety a priority, the school initiated an investigation into her home life, committed to uncovering the truth and offering support. As the inquiry progressed, Victoria remained ensnared in her silence, haunted by memories of her mother and the relentless pain. She missed her mother profoundly as the days turned into weeks, and her emotional suffering persisted. Her resilience waned, and her ability to cope diminished. She often sat alone at school, lacking friends to converse with or distract her from her internal struggles. Observant mothers of her classmates began to notice her despondency. They saw her sad expression and downcast demeanor as she walked with her head hung low. Approaching her with friendly intentions, they sought to offer warmth and inclusion. Throughout this ordeal, Victoria remained acutely aware of the precarious situation at home, recognizing the risks to both herself and her well-being. At the local school, a diligent group of teachers maintained a vigilant watch over Victoria, a student who seemed to carry a heavy burden. The teachers, concerned for her well-being, often engaged her in conversations, carefully observing her reactions to various topics. They noticed a pattern of anxiety that emerged whenever the discussion shifted towards her father, raising their suspicions about her situation at home. One fateful day, Victoria arrived at school visibly troubled by a recurring intense pain that she had been experiencing. As the day progressed, the pain worsened dramatically, culminating in a moment where she could no longer bear it and burst into tears. Clara, the attentive teacher who was overseeing the class at the time, rushed to Victoria's side with a mix of concern and urgency in her voice. "Victoria, what's wrong?" she asked, overwhelmed by her pain and unable to speak. Victoria could only respond through her tears, acting swiftly. Clara supported Victoria as they made their way to the nurse's office, simultaneously notifying the school director of the critical situation. Understanding the severity of the circumstances, the director immediately called for medical assistance. At the same time, Rodrigo, Victoria's father, was at work when he received a distressing call informing him of his daughter's condition. He left his workplace in a hurry, anxious to be with Victoria. Upon his arrival, he found her in a state of uncontrollable crying. Gently, he tried to comfort her, asking, "My dear, what happened? Tell Daddy what's wrong." Victoria, caught between her pain and fear, managed to express a wish to go home but was visibly fearful of how her father might react to being called away from his responsibilities. As Rodrigo tried to soothe her, Victoria's pain intensified, leading her to scream out again. This scene deeply upset Rodrigo, who felt helpless as he watched his daughter suffer. The school staff, who were also present, closely observed Rodrigo's reactions, adding to the tense atmosphere. Suddenly, the situation escalated when two police officers entered the room with serious expressions. A confused and anxious Rodrigo sought an explanation, only to be met with a grave accusation. One of the officers informed him that they had received a report alleging violence involving Victoria. Stunned and struggling to comprehend the accusation, Rodrigo was restrained as the police announced that he was being arrested on suspicion of serious assault against a minor. Rodrigo's disbelief quickly transformed into a fervent denial. He passionately declared his love for his daughter and vehemently proclaimed his innocence to everyone in the room. Despite his protests, the police proceeded to take him into custody. The sight of the officers escorting him away left Rodrigo heartbroken. His pleas and declarations of love for Victoria echoing in the room as he was led away. The sight of her father being taken into custody overwhelmed Victoria with immense fear and guilt, feeling somehow responsible for his plight. The combined cries of father and daughter resonated through the room, creating a poignant chorus of despair that reverberated throughout the school community. This heart-wrenching scene left everyone present deeply shocked and concerned, sparking discussions among the parents and staff about the unfolding events and their implications. The hospital was a flurry of activity as doctors and nurses moved swiftly, their expressions a mix of concern and professional focus. Victoria's room was filled with the beeping of monitors and the soft murmur of medical staff discussing her care plan. Her mother sat by her bedside, offering words of comfort, her face etched with worry and exhaustion. Back in the school, the incident had caused a significant uproar among the parents and staff. Many parents were understandably worried about the safety of their own children, and the atmosphere was tense. The principal, in an effort to restore calm, addressed the gathering with a firm yet reassuring tone, explaining the steps the school was taking to ensure student safety and cooperate with the authorities. Meanwhile, Rodrigo found himself in a stark, unwelcoming police cell, his mind racing with thoughts of his daughter's well-being. He was dumbfounded by the allegations against him, unable to fathom how he could be suspected of harming his precious child. In his desperation, he reiterated his innocence to anyone who would listen, saying, "I swear I didn't do anything. I could never harm my daughter. I love her more than anything in the world." The officers at the station maintained a professional demeanor but were clearly skeptical of Rodrigo's pleas. "Sir, you must understand that this is a serious matter. We need to conduct a thorough investigation. If you are indeed innocent, you have nothing to fear. We are simply following protocol," one officer explained. Feeling a mix of guilt and humiliation, Rodrigo continued to plead for a chance to see his daughter, to be there for her in her time of need. But his request seemed to fall on deaf ears. In the cell, some inmates had approached him, curious about his story. Rodrigo, overwhelmed with emotion, shared his distress. "I've been detained, and my daughter is severely ill and suffering," he said, his voice cracking. "They suspect I've done something to her, but I swear, I would never hurt my little girl." The inmates looked at each other with suspicion and wariness. "Children are precious. You will pay dearly if you truly harmed her. Although we don't know the details, your being here suggests someone harbors suspicions against you," one remarked. As Rodrigo moved to another side of the cell, he could still overhear their conversations, which filled him with doubt and fear. "He ought to be imprisoned indefinitely," a nearby prisoner remarked sharply. A palpable sense of urgency gripped Rodrigo as he realized he needed to uncover the truth and prove his innocence. But was he truly innocent? The question haunted him as he sat in the cold cell, isolated and anxious. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Victoria lay in her bed, the painkillers slowly helping to ease her discomfort. She was mostly unaware of the chaos unfolding around her, her mind hazily drifting in and out of sleep under the influence of medication. While her mother kept a vigilant watch, praying for her recovery and for the truth to come to light, Victoria was gently informed that she would need to undergo a medical examination by the doctor. The sight of blood stains on her clothing had filled her with anxiety and fear, and she found herself desperately wishing for her father's comforting presence. Overcome with emotion, Victoria cried inconsolably, even as Clara, Laura, and the school director tried to soothe her distress. The physician conducted the examination with efficiency and compassion, taking necessary samples with care. After completing the examination, the doctor approached Victoria with a warm smile, asking kindly, "Hello, princess, can you tell me where it hurts when you feel the pain?" Victoria timidly pointed to her abdomen. The doctor examined her gently and then reassured her. "Everything looks fine with your stomach, but you do have a urinary infection," she explained with calmness, ensuring Victoria understood. "But don't worry, we will take care of it with some medication, okay?" In addition, the doctor informed Victoria that she was beginning puberty, a natural process which might be contributing to her discomfort. She emphasized that there was no evidence of any assault, reassuring everyone that Victoria's symptoms were a natural part of her body's development. Clara and Laura both sighed in relief, their earlier suspicions now alleviated. They felt a profound guilt for not having given Rodrigo, Victoria's father, a chance to explain himself. They immediately contacted the police station, advocating strongly for Rodrigo's release. As the cell door was unlocked, the guard remarked, "So you really are innocent, huh?" Overwhelmed with relief, Rodrigo began to cry tears of relief. Rodrigo, a devoted father, had always placed his daughter's needs above all. Despite his unassuming appearance and the wear and tear of life's challenges, his life had been difficult, particularly as he was committed to raising Victoria alone. Despite his demanding job schedule and financial struggles, Rodrigo remained a devoted protector of his daughter. After losing a job, he had resorted to collecting cans along roadsides and hiking trails as a means to make ends meet. Despite these hardships, his deepest affection was always reserved for his daughter Victoria, who had survived a severe accident and was his only remaining family. A heartwarming reunion at the hospital became possible, waiting anxiously. Rodrigo was filled with anticipation. As Victoria ran into his arms, they both wept and embraced tightly, sharing a moment of profound relief and love. Rodrigo vowed to stay by her side, apologizing for the ordeal she had endured. Meanwhile, the teachers and the school director rushed to apologize to Rodrigo, acknowledging their mistake in judgment. The gynecologist reassured him that Victoria was unharmed and clarified the misunderstanding, relieved and grateful. Rodrigo felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, thankful for the resolution and the clearing of his name. Rodrigo felt a profound sense of relief and deep gratitude wash over him. In a sincere gesture to make amends, the school director extended an offer to Rodrigo for a position as a janitor within the school. This opportunity not only presented Rodrigo with a steadier and more reliable source of income but also provided a sense of security to better support his beloved daughter. Without hesitation, Rodrigo accepted the offer, deeply appreciative of the stability and peace of mind it promised to bring into their lives. As time passed, the clouds of worry dissipated, Victoria recovered fully from her health struggles, and all the unfounded charges against Rodrigo were dismissed. The trials they faced only served to fortify the bond between father and daughter. Rodrigo came to realize that his love for Victoria had grown even deeper through these challenges. Nothing, he knew, could ever weaken the unbreakable bond they shared. Having overcome the hurdles that once threatened to separate them, Rodrigo's story came to a heartwarming conclusion. If you found inspiration in today's tale, don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Join us next time for another enriching story. See you then.